Let's now turn our attention to the paintings on the other side of the rotunda. These four paintings move us forward some 150 years in America's history, close to the time when Washington, D.C. was planned and the Capitol was constructed. Interestingly, these four paintings were painted by one of our founding fathers. They're the work of John Trumbull, called the Painter of the Revolution. John Trumbull served as an officer during the American Revolution, and what makes Trumbull's paintings so meaningful is that he personally witnessed much of what he painted, and he personally knew many of those that he painted in these pictures. Because of John Trumbull's commitment to artistic accuracy, the faces in these paintings are probably about as close as we'll ever get to having photographs of our founding fathers. John Trumbull came from a family of outspoken Christians, and the other members of his family are honored here at the Capitol, as we will soon see. In fact, as an indication of the strong faith of this family, I hold here one of several proclamations issued by his brother, Jonathan. Jonathan also served as an officer. He was an officer on George Washington's staff during the Revolution. Here's Colonel Trumbull himself, seated with the officers at the surrender of Lord Cornwallis at Yorktown. After the Revolution, Jonathan became governor of Connecticut, and this proclamation, issued while he was governor, calls the entire state to a day of prayer and thanksgiving. As you can see, the language is strongly evangelical. Trumbull issued several such proclamations, but this is no surprise, for these proclamations reflect the very nature of Jonathan Trumbull. In fact, Jonathan Trumbull was only one of an overwhelming majority of our founding fathers and early leaders who were strongly and openly religious. However, there are many today who dispute any such a characterization. Rather than acknowledge that Christianity played an important role in the formation of the nation, or that there's a deep and rich religious heritage attached to this building, or that most of our founding fathers were strongly and openly religious, instead they claim just the opposite. For example, one prominent historian amazingly asserts the founding fathers were at most deists. And in this article entitled, "The Founding Fathers Were Not Christians," and notice the emphasis placed on the word not, this writer forcefully asserts that the early presidents and patriots were generally deists or Unitarians, believing in some form of impersonal providence, but rejecting the divinity of Jesus and the relevance of the Bible. Another author similarly charges most of our other patriarchs were at best deists, not believing in the God of the Old and New Testaments. And the title of this book seems to say it all: The Godless Constitution. There are scores of other examples, but the reason that such absurd accusations often go unrefuted by the average citizen is because most Americans don't even know who our founders are. Let me illustrate this. This is the picture of the signing of the Constitution, and we will visit the location of this picture later. But for now, how many of the 39 signers do you think the average citizen can identify? For example, which one is Gouverneur Morris? Which one is William Patterson? Which one is John Dickinson? Each of these signers of the Constitution played crucial roles, yet today most have never even heard of them. Similarly, consider the 56 signers of the Declaration. Which one is Stephen Hopkins, or Samuel Huntington, or Richard Henry Lee? You see, if we don't know who they are, then we clearly can't address the charge of whether or not they were religious. In previous generations, however, ridiculous charges such as those we hear today were immediately rejected because we knew our history and we knew our founders. For example, this textbook from 1848, which has recently been reprinted, was used in our classroom for generations. It not only provided a brief biography of each of the 56 signers of the Declaration, but it was quite candid about the strong religious faith of many of them. For generations, we knew our founders, and we knew their strong religious beliefs. Well, in a return to the spirit of these earlier school books, let's examine some of the religious beliefs held by the founders depicted in these paintings. Let's begin here with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Congress approved the Declaration of Independence on July the 4th, 1776, but it was not signed until August the 2nd of that year, and during that intervening month, some of the founders who had voted for the Declaration were called away to the service of their country before they could actually sign the Declaration. For example, George Clinton voted for the Declaration on July the 4th, but before he could sign it, he was called to assume military leadership in New York. And even though Robert Livingston was on the 5-man committee charged with authoring the Declaration, he was recalled to serve in the state legislature before he could sign the very document he had helped draft. On the other hand, some of the 56 who signed the Declaration on August the 2nd had not been in Congress on July the 4th to vote for it, including Matthew Thornton, Thomas Stone, and Francis Lightfoot Lee. So, every individual in this painting, whether by voting or by signing, in some way contributed to the Declaration. Now, what are their religious beliefs? Let's begin with John Witherspoon. He was an ordained minister of the gospel and had several published books of gospel sermons, and was responsible for 2 American editions of the Bible, including this one from 1791. This Bible is considered America's very first family Bible. The Reverend Dr. Witherspoon wrote the introduction for this Bible, and even though the Bible's text is generally the text of the King James Bible, it does not carry that title. After all, the Americans, including Dr. Witherspoon, had just fought a war to be free of kings. So why would they herald the name of a king on this American edition of the Bible? This Bible, therefore, describes itself only as the Holy Bible, because as Dr. Witherspoon pointed out, this was God's word, not the word of any mere king. John Witherspoon, signer of the Declaration and minister of the gospel, is responsible for America's very first family Bible. This man is Charles Thompson. Charles Thompson was the Secretary of Congress, and he and John Hancock were the only 2 founders to sign the first draft of the Declaration of Independence. Charles Thompson is a founder responsible for an American edition of the Bible. This Bible is called Thompson's Bible, named for Charles Thompson, and it is the first translation of the Greek Septuagint into English. It took Charles Thompson 25 years to complete this translation, but even today, this work by one of our founders is still considered one of the more scholarly American translations of the Bible. Consider next Charles Carroll of Carrollton. Charles Carroll was the final surviving signer of the Declaration. He was the last of the 56 signers to pass away, dying in 1832 at the age of 95. I hold here one of his original letters, this one written on his 89th birthday. Notice the strong and unequivocal declaration of his Christian faith.
On the mercy of my Redeemer I rely for salvation, and on His merits, not on any works that I've done in obedience to His precepts.
A bold declaration, but not surprising, for in other of his writings, Charles Carroll explained that his faith was one of the chief reasons that he had entered into the American Revolution. He was fighting to preserve religious liberty. In fact, he was so committed to Christianity that he built and personally funded a Christian house of worship. Charles Carroll's life and words confirm that he was a strong, outspoken Christian, and he is one of the handful of Americans who has been honored here at the Capitol with a statue located in East Central Hall. This man is Dr. Benjamin Rush. When he died in 1813, the newspapers of the day and the other founders who were still alive declared that Dr. Rush was one of our 3 most notable founding fathers, ranking him in prominence along with George Washington and Benjamin Franklin. Yet who today has heard of Benjamin Rush, or who knows of his accomplishments? Benjamin Rush was a leading educator, helping start 5 universities and colleges, including the first college for women. Additionally, he's called the father of American medicine. He personally trained 3,000 students for their medical degrees, and he made numerous medical discoveries which still benefit us today. He was also a founder of America's first abolition society, and for 40 years he was a national leader in the abolition movement. In relation to his faith, today we still benefit from his labors. For example, in 1791, Dr. Benjamin Rush founded the Sunday school movement in America. He started what was called the First Day Society, which has grown into today's Sunday schools. And in addition to starting Sunday schools, Dr. Benjamin Rush also started America's very first Bible Society. Here is the original Constitution for that first Bible Society. This Constitution is authored by Dr. Benjamin Rush himself. In this Constitution, Dr. Rush lists 2 very important reasons why America needed Bible societies. First, he pointed out that with the Bible, every individual could discover how to have a personal relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And second, he argued that if every individual owned a Bible and would just study it and obey it, that all of our social problems, including crime, slavery, etc., would diminish. As Dr. Rush explained, it is in living by the Bible that man becomes both humanized and civilized. In looking for ways to print Bibles faster and for less money, Dr. Rush and the Society came across what was called stereotyped printing, an early form of mass production. The result was that, with the help of President James Madison, and in an act passed by Congress in this building, Dr. Rush's Bible Society obtained stereotype plates by which they could mass-produce Bibles. This is the result: America's very first mass-produced stereotyped Bible, and it came about through the efforts of Dr. Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence.